The Michigan Man Podcast, episode 236. National Signing Day is upon us, and Michigan basketball begins the month of February without the services of point guard Derrick Walton Jr. That and more on this week's show. Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast, brought to you in partnership with Maize & Brew, your best source for quality Michigan Wolverine news, rumors, analysis, stats, and scores from the fan perspective, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. National Signing Day is finally here, and shortly after this show publishes, we should find out how Coach Harbaugh and his staff fared in putting together their first recruiting class. As most of you know, we record the show on Tuesdays and publish late Tuesday or Wednesday morning. So this week we'll let the dust settle on National Signing Day, and next week we'll have our 2015 recruiting roundup. Wolverine recruiting analyst Tim Sullivan from the Wolverine will be my guest. Tim does a great job covering Michigan recruiting, so I'm sure you'll enjoy his breakdown of Coach Harbaugh's first class as head coach. 2 weeks ago, we found out that Karis LeVert was done for the season, and we knew another key player, Derrick Walton Jr., was fighting a nagging toe injury, the kind that takes time to heal. What at first was described as turf toe is now a more extensive and serious injury. On Sunday, Coach Beilein told us Derrick Walton was out for the foreseeable future. Until then, Coach Beilein's young squad will have to fight and claw for every win every night out. After the Michigan State game on Sunday, Coach B said he is seeing improvement from his team, but it will need to happen at an accelerated pace if Michigan has any dreams of making a postseason tournament. On my Michigan Gameday segment this week, we'll hear from Wolverine beat writer Rod Beard from the Detroit News. Before we bring Rod in, let's check our Wolverine News and Notes for this week. On Sunday, Interim Athletic Director Jim Hackett said there will be one home night game on the schedule this fall. He said that either home games against Michigan State and Ohio State are possibilities, just not both. Hackett said he hopes to announce the night game very soon. Jim Harbaugh has hired former Paramus High School head coach Chris Partridge as his new recruiting operations coordinator. Partridge coached current redshirt freshman Jabril Peppers and Juwan Bushell-Beatty in high school. Tight end Jake Butt underwent minor arthroscopic knee surgery in Ann Arbor last week. He is expected to be ready to go for spring practice next month. Another two players decided to transfer last week, senior tight end Keith Heitzman and backup quarterback Russell Bellamy. Both will receive their degrees in April and would be eligible to play immediately for their new schools. Neither player has announced where they might end up for their fifth and final season of eligibility. Coach Beilein said on Monday that Derrick Walton Jr. will not require any type of procedure on his injured foot. Rest is the only prescription. Coach B said he has no idea how long Walton will be out of the lineup. For this Patchwork Michigan basketball team, it is what it is. They have scrapped and clawed the last two games without Walton, and we continue to see improvement from the freshmen, in particular, Abdur Rahman, Aubrey Dawkins, and Ricky Doyle. There are still 8 games remaining in the regular season, and yes, it's going to be an uphill battle, but that is what Coach Beilein does best, as we've seen over the years. Develop young talent and teach them to play with confidence and passion. So don't give up yet. It will at least be fun watching this young team play it out in February and March. Michigan beat writer Rod Beard from the Detroit News is courtside for every game and will join us next with his always keen insight into Michigan basketball. So stay with us here on the Michigan Man Podcast in partnership with SB Nation's Maize & Brew. Back with us this week on our Michigan Game Day segment, Michigan basketball beat writer Rod Beard from the Detroit News. Great to have you back, Rod.
Always great to be on. Always a pleasure.
Well, Rod, Michigan hung tough on Sunday against the Spartans, but just ran out of gas in overtime, didn't they?
Yeah, it was almost a reboot of the Wisconsin game where they took them to overtime and couldn't get that push that they needed at the start of overtime to be able to pull this game out. But a lot of good things to take away from this overtime game against Michigan State that some of the young guys can play, and we got good glimpses of that.
We know a lot of folks were saying heading into Sunday's game it could be a make-it or a break-it game for both teams, the Spartans and the Wolverines, with regards to their postseason hopes. Do you think it's a little bit too early for that kind of thinking?
Well, I think it can break. It might have broken Michigan State. It might have leaned that way a little bit more, and it might have helped to make Michigan season because they don't have a really good road win if you look at their schedule and their resume if you're thinking that far ahead. Michigan State has a couple of good wins in the Big Ten, but Michigan didn't build a really good resume in the non-conference season and has beaten the bottom half of the Big Ten. All of their wins have come against teams in the bottom half of the Big Ten, so they need something from one of the better teams in the league to be able to show that they could be a tournament contender and to be able to win a couple of games there. And that's what the resume that they're going to look at for the NCAA tournament is if you get into the tournament, what chance do you have to come in and make a win, at least for the at-large teams? And one would think that's where Michigan would be slated right now.
On Sunday, Rod, we saw for the second consecutive game Michigan without Derrick Walton Jr., and then Coach Beilein said Derrick Walton is out for the foreseeable future. Has that injury gone from turf toe to something more extensive now?
I think so, and they didn't come out and say exactly what the results of the tests that they were looking to run and to get some answers about. They didn't say what the results were exactly, but the conclusion is he's going to be out for quite a bit of time there. And it started with that toe right after the Villanova game in the non-conference season. It's really been something that hasn't healed, hasn't had the time to heal, and consistently being on it in practice and in games. They've held him out of practice the past couple of weeks to try to give him an opportunity to get better with it. But I think it's coming from him compensating for the toe and landing on his foot a little bit differently to try to reduce some of that pain. And as most people know, when you have one injury and you try to continue to play through it or walk on it or continue to work with it, you risk another injury to another part of the body because the muscles are different. You're doing something different to try to overcompensate for that injury. I think that's what happened in Walton's case, is that the foot got a little bit more injured. Maybe he's not landing completely on the toe. He's landing on the flat part of his foot instead of coming down on that toe, and that can cause a lot of other different issues. But the concern is long-term that he'll be out for quite a bit more of the season, a couple more weeks possibly, and with only 8 games left in the regular season, that's going to be a big concern whether, as you alluded, that Michigan's going to be able to build a resume to be able to make a postseason. Maybe it's the NIT this year instead of the NCAA tournament, but that still remains to be seen, what the extent of the injury is and how much longer they're going to hold him out.
Well, in this patchwork lineup that we're seeing some positives from, freshman Muhammad Ali Abdur-Rahman, man, he looks like a player, doesn't he?
Oh, absolutely, and that's the positive thing to come out of this. And for Michigan fans, if you want to have something positive to look at, think of what this roster is going to look like at the beginning of next year when these guys have a little bit more seasoning, a little bit more experience under their belts. Karis LeVert potentially coming back. Duncan Robinson is sitting out this year, but he's a 6'8", 6'9" forward who can shoot from the wing. A lot of guys have said he shoots it like Nick Stauskas, but he's 6'8" or 6'9". So it's been that forward position that Michigan has had so much trouble with. If you can plug in a 6'9" guy there that can shoot the ball, that's a prototype Beilein guy that he'd like to get out there on the court. So there are a lot of positives to look forward to. You're just starting to see some flashes. And what Beilein said before is the reason that he didn't play Abdur-Rahman and Aubrey Dawkins earlier in the season is because they just hadn't shown it in practice. And he's been so hesitant to throw guys out there to the Wolves when, if they haven't shown it in practice, what are they going to do when they get out there on the court in a Big Ten game under the lights with a lot of pressure going on? And we saw yesterday with Abdur-Rahman, he's not afraid of the big stage. He came out in that first half first couple of minutes and hit a couple of jumpers. He hit the three-pointer, hit 7 points in that first half before he got in foul trouble. There was no fear there in Breslin Center, which is one of the most fearsome atmospheres to play in the Big Ten. As they say, he had ice water in his veins and came out and played like a veteran. So I think that's another positive that you take out of that, is that he wasn't awed at all by the moment and went out there and played like a veteran.
Even with Derrick Walton sidelined, Rod, Michigan is getting big minutes, solid leadership from Spike Albrecht, aren't we?
Spike is just kind of the curious case of Spike is every once in a while he'll have a game like he did yesterday. That was a career-high 18 points that he had against Michigan State. He had the 17, of course, in the national championship game, and he had another 17-point game earlier this year. He's been really, really steady, but I maintain the issue with Spike is that if he has to be pressed into 25 or 30 minutes, that you don't get the most out of him. He generally plays better when he gets about 15 minutes or so. 15 to 20 minutes, and you can see where Muhammad is playing a lot better as he gets more minutes. Sometimes it takes him a little bit to get revved up. He's like a semi-truck. You can't put him in for 5 minutes and expect him to immediately be effective. He doesn't start up that quickly. But if he gets things and gets an opportunity to get in the flow of the offense, he can do a lot of things off the dribble. And I talked to Brandon Dawson afterwards, and that was the biggest compliment that Michigan State paid to Muhammad, was that they had to switch one of their bigger defenders, one of their better defenders, over on him so he couldn't get to the basket as easily. And Dawson said, hey, that's a guy that played far beyond his years. He was ready for the prime time and came in and played, like I said, like a veteran that you would expect a Trey Burke or a Karis LeVert or a Walton or one of those guys to be able to come in and play like. So that was a good sign from Muhammad early that he was able to do that.
Well, another good sign is the last two games we've seen pretty good efforts from Zach Irvin. He has to continue, of course, to step it up if this team is going to have any chance at any kind of postseason play, though, doesn't he?
The thing with Irvin is it seems like he played a little bit better when he had LeVert, and certainly last season when he had some of the other guys to take the heat off of him, and they can kick the ball out, and he's got an open three-point shot. What John Beilein has been saying is he's got to adjust to that, is that now he's not the third or fourth or fifth option on offense. He's the number one offense in a lot of their sets. And so the opposing team is going to put their best defender on him. They're going to body him up a little bit more. They're going to pay some more attention to him. And that takes a lot of adjustment for some shooters to get used to. If you had one whole year where you were just bombing from the outside and didn't have very much problem with it, now you've got to create your own shot. Now you've got to play against a defense that's completely geared towards you, and the game plan is picking you out from the very beginning of the game. That's an adjustment for a lot of people, and it looks like Zach Irvin is going through that same type of adjustment. Yesterday, again, a little bit of turning the corner for him that he can take some positives out of that, but the consistency is going to be the biggest deal. It's on a game-to-game basis. Can he bring that same type of energy and intensity where he's diving for balls, where he's getting rebounds? He had 12 rebounds against Wisconsin. Does he bring that on a game-to-game basis, no matter the opponent, no matter what the situation, that you get that same type of key player from one of your best players, and probably your best player that's out there on the court left for you?
With us on our Michigan Game Day segment this week, Michigan basketball beat writer Rod Beard from the Detroit News. Rod, we're going to see a lot of these bright young faces the remainder of the season. Who else from this young stable of players do you think is making strides right now?
I think Ricky Doyle is starting to make strides, but again, with a big man, it's probably even harder to look and to say that's a guy that's going to contribute and he's going to be able to deliver on a consistent basis. He's been getting over a respiratory illness, so his wind and just being able to get up and down the court without getting tired has been a big question. I mean, the other big thing is Max Bielfeldt, and he's not a young guy, but that's a guy who's been on the practice squad, who's really paid his dues off the court that you haven't seen as much. But now when he's in there, he's playing big minutes against Wisconsin. He's playing big minutes against Michigan State. He's really delivering for them, and certainly this could be his last year. He could potentially come back for a fifth year next year, either at Michigan or he could come back somewhere else with that fifth year. But that might be a guy that Beilein says, you know what, we can use that experience. We can use that post presence, even though he's, 6'6" or 6'7". He's undersized at the center position, but he's able to create space underneath for himself. And Mark Donnell, we haven't seen as much of either. He's got the same respiratory issue. He missed the second straight game. But I think you look at what Muhammad and what Aubrey Dawkins are able to do. Dawkins had 13 points against Nebraska. I mean, you see just the layers of the onion starting to get peeled back, and they're starting to realize with more play, consistent play, and in larger spurts, that they can play on a Division I level, a Big Ten level. And these are guys that were late signees in the recruiting class last year that you thought might come in and play 5 minutes, 10 minutes tops for you, and they're coming in and playing big roles and playing in Big Ten games that matter to try to get Michigan into a postseason. I think that experience is going to prove invaluable for them when you look at next year and then down the road.
Rod, as if we need a reminder, we're again seeing why John Beilein is such a great coach. We don't know where this season is headed with 8 games left, then the Big Ten tournament. But right now, this is shaping up to be one of his best coaching jobs yet. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, I think so, unquestionably, because if you give guys the talent and coaches the talent, they can go out, and most coaches are going to be able to succeed with that. We saw that with the 2013 team getting to the national championship, and yet the starting group was all NBA guys. But to take a group of guys that are probably your practice squad or guys that you would take into the CCRB and feel like you have a good opportunity to make a couple of good runs with, I mean, that tells you that you can motivate these guys, but also you can coach them up and get them ready to play in a Big Ten environment. I mean, it's not easy to go into Breslin. And again, we've seen that with some of these past squads that have had NBA guys. It's not easy to go in there and try to get a win, much less take those guys to overtime like these guys did yesterday. And that's just a testament to what he's been able to do to make them to believe, to make them to play like a team. To get them to buy into a game plan and to stick together. It's not easy teaching a 1-3-1 defense and having those guys execute it, or 2-3, but I think they've done enough reps with it. They've instilled enough confidence in these guys where they feel like they can go out and do it, and for the most part, they've been able to do it. Just an admirable job by some young guys and the coaching staff in building that level of confidence with them.
Well, Rod, in this league and with this Michigan team, there isn't a lock or a gimme on the schedule the rest of the way. It's another big week, Iowa at home, and then Indiana in that madhouse of theirs on Sunday. How do you think Michigan matches up against both of those teams?
Well, Iowa is kind of a Jekyll and Hyde team that they will come out and they'll beat one of the better teams in the league, and then they'll come out and lose to one of the bottom-tier teams in the Big Ten. I think it's a winnable game, especially with the way that Michigan's been playing the past 3 or 4 games without Karis LeVert, without Derrick Walton. It's a winnable game at home, but the one at Indiana is the one that you got to feel like you've got to have a lot of things fall your way in order to be able to steal that game. Indiana's been playing well of late, one of the surprise teams in the Big Ten this year. And that's just a road game that if you win that game, that's going to get you on the road to being an NCAA team, because that's a signature win that the committee can look at and say, hey, here's a game they probably weren't supposed to win. And if they're able to get that win, that's going to raise some eyebrows.
Well, as this week begins, 8 games left in the regular season, and for me anyway, it's tough to imagine, Michigan coming out even 500 when you look at that schedule. When you look at this team entering this week, is there any way you can imagine they have a prayer at making the NCAA?
I think so, and this is the kind of odd part of it. Outside of winning the Big Ten tournament, obviously, which would give them an automatic bid, their final 2 games are at Northwestern and against Rutgers. You'd have to believe they can't lose either one of those just for the sake of not having another bad loss on the schedule. They've already got to overcome the NJIT and the EMU losses in the eyes of the committee. But of the other 6 games before that, you would think if they could win 4 of those and go 4-2 in the next 6 and then win those final 2 games, they've got a shot. And you're looking at Iowa, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan State, Ohio State, and Maryland. Sure, those are some of the best teams that are left in the league. If you can win 3 more of those, well, actually 3 more of those, and in those final 2, you'd get to 5-3 in these last few games, and that gets you to 11 wins in conference. It's going to be hard to shut out a Big Ten team that gets 11 wins, and that probably puts you around 4th place in the conference, 4th or 5th place in the conference. And the number 4 team in the Big Ten, if it has a okay overall record, that's going to put them at, 18, 19 wins? You win 1 game in the Big Ten tournament. I think 19 wins and 11-7 in the Big Ten gets you into the tournament by the slimmest of margins. But again, in these next 6 games, where I'm saying they've got to win 3, if they go 50% there, if you win at Indiana, you win at Maryland and you beat Ohio State or you beat Michigan State, one of those, you've beaten, by definition, 3 teams that are near the top of the league. And so that's what builds your resume for you. And then they might look at, well, Wisconsin and Michigan State, they took it in overtime in those games. That's not going to play a big part in building that resume, but it could be a deciding factor that they're able to get 3 more wins against some quality teams down the road here. But again, all of that is moot if they're not able to beat Northwestern and then at Rutgers in the final 2 games of the regular season.
Well, Rod, a final question for you. I like to ask you beat writers this every week because every week it changes. We've played 22 games now, but right now, heading into the Iowa game at home this week and Indiana and the final 8-game stretch, what do you like about this team right now?
I like that they've got spirit and they don't give up. It would have been very easy for some of these young guys to say, hey, we can start looking forward to next year and start preparing for next year. None of this stuff really matters. This isn't a tournament team, and that was our goal at the beginning of the year, to be a Big Ten contender. You look at Karis LeVert going down and Derrick Walton being out for what looks like a significant amount of time for the remainder of the year. And it would have been easy to just fold up the tent and say, hey, it's just not our year. It's not going to happen. But I like that some of the young guys are starting to step to the forefront. You look at Muhammad Ali Abdur-Rahman playing just out of his mind right now. But that's what you want to see from some of your young guys, given the opportunity. We saw similar type of step up for Derrick Walton toward the end of the year last year, especially in the Michigan State game at Breslin Center. So you can see the patterns of that. And I like the coaching staff that they're really instilling in these guys the level of confidence that they can go out there and play. You wouldn't have said Max Bielfeldt would have been a significant contributor at the beginning of the year, but there he is out there in the final minutes and the final seconds of this game, tipping that ball in to be able to send it to overtime. There's just a lot of little outlier type guys that are coming in and contributing and delivering in spots where they typically hadn't, and that takes a lot for guys to be able to do. We've seen so many opportunities where veterans haven't done it, or NBA guys from Michigan haven't done that in their opportunities here. But for these guys that are certainly under the radar, to be able to do the same thing just says a lot. And I think that's going to look good for next year when you start thinking about what this lineup could be.
Our guest with us on our Michigan Game Day segment this week has been Michigan basketball beat writer Rod Beard from the Detroit News. As always, Rod, great to have you on, and we look forward to the next visit.
Yeah, anytime. Certainly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks again to Michigan beat writer Rod Beard from the Detroit News for being our guest on Michigan Game Day this week. It was another busy week on the Michigan athletic scene, and we'll take a look at that next on Wolverine Quick Hits as we wrap it up for another week here on the Michigan Man Podcast in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. On Wolverine Quick Hits this week, Dylan Larkin scored a power play goal in the opening period, but Michigan State's Matt DeBlow broke a 1-1 tie on a deflection at 1:58 of the third period, and the U of M hockey team fell 2-1 to Michigan State on Saturday in front of a sold-out crowd at Joe Louis Arena. Michigan State snapped the Wolverines' 7-game winning streak, dating back to December 13th, the longest active winning streak in the nation. Michigan had a late power play chance in the third period, trailing 2-1, as Mackenzie McEachran was called for hooking at 16:37 of the final frame. However, the Wolverines managed just 2 shots on goal on the main advantage and could not solve Michigan State goaltender Jake Hildebrand in the final minute of play with the extra attacker. Michigan finished the night 1-4-3 on the power play, while holding the Spartans scoreless in 1 power play chance. Goaltender Zach Nagelvort made 26 saves in net in his second consecutive start for the Wolverines. Michigan will travel to Chicago this weekend for the Hockey City Big Ten Classic at Soldier Field, where the Wolverines will take on Michigan State once again on Saturday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time in a game that will air on the Big Ten Network. Heading into this weekend's action, Michigan 15-8-0 overall, 7-2 in the Big Ten. The University of Michigan women's basketball team led by as many as 14 points in the first half, and senior Shannon Smith led all scorers with 22 points, but a 26-5 second half run by number 15 Nebraska turned U of M's 6-point lead into a 15-point deficit in a 75-60 Wolverine defeat on Sunday afternoon inside Pinnacle Bank Arena. Smith was 7 of 13 from the field and 7 of 10 from the charity stripe. Smith also had 8 boards and 4 assists. Classmate Nicole Elmblad added 10 points and 6 boards. Freshman Caitlin Flaherty had 9 points, while senior Saisha Gori registered 9 rebounds, 6 points, and 5 assists. Sophomore Sierra Thompson had 8 points and pulled down 5 boards. Michigan completes its 2-game road swing this Thursday, taking on Michigan State in East Lansing. Tip-off is set for 7 p.m. The Wolverines now 13-8 overall, and at an even 500 in the Big Ten, 5-5. The number 16 ranked University of Michigan wrestling team could not overcome a slow start against number 5 Penn State, falling to the 4-time defending NCAA champions 19-15 on Friday in front of 1,830 fans at Cliff Keen Arena. The Wolverines claimed 4 matches in the duel, including a pin at 184 pounds, but dropped each of the first 4 bouts and never led in the contest. Michigan won 4 of the final 6 bouts after giving up a 12-point deficit after the lower weights, but could not complete the comeback. The Wolverines will continue Big Ten dual competition this weekend, hosting Nebraska at 7 p.m. on Friday at Cliff Keen Arena, before heading to West Lafayette, Indiana to face Purdue at 1 p.m. on Sunday. The Nebraska dual meet will be streamed live via BTN+. U of M is now 5-4 overall, 3-3 in the Big Ten. Senior Haley Wagner and juniors Sierra Lawrence and Sierra Romero of the number 8 ranked University of Michigan softball team each scored a spot on the USA Softball Collegiate Player of the Year Top 50 watch list, as announced by the organization earlier this week. With a trio of representatives on the list, Michigan is tied for the second most, along with Georgia, Oklahoma, and Oregon. Arizona placed 4 student athletes on the list. Romero nearly won the award her sophomore campaign, as she was among the top 3 finalists for the honor. Florida State's Lacey Waldrop won it. She is coming off a historic season that saw her continue to rewrite Michigan's record books. The first-team All-American set the new single-season batting average record for Michigan at .491, which was second best in the nation. Romero also took first place in single-season records for runs scored, 74, and grand slams, 4. She led the country in 2 offensive categories in 2014, on-base percentage and walks per game. She was 4th in slugging, 897, and 4th in runs per game at 1.19. The Wolverines open the 2015 campaign against number 1 Florida this Saturday. The game will be part of a doubleheader along with South Florida. First pitch action against the Gators is scheduled for 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time, with the game taking place at USF Softball Stadium in Tampa, Florida. University of Michigan baseball juniors Jacob Cronenworth and Travis Mazers were named to the Baseball America preseason All-America second team, the magazine announced earlier this week. This is Cronenworth's 3rd preseason All-America honor, while Mazes earns his 2nd preseason All-America nod. Cronenworth, an infielder, relief pitcher, hit .268 for the Maize and Blue in 2014 with a pair of home runs, 6 doubles, 4 triples, 28 RBIs, and 19 stolen bases. The St. Clair, Michigan native also had 12 saves with a 1.75 earned run average on the Hill. He was 2nd in the Big Ten last season with 41 walks at the plate and tied for 3rd in the conference with 11 sacrifice hits. The 12 saves tied for 2nd in the Big Ten in 2014, as Cronenworth had 27 strikeouts in 25.2 innings pitched. Going into his junior season, he has 31 career stolen bases, 69 career RBIs, and 19 career saves. Mazes hit .302 with 18 doubles, 4 triples, 3 home runs, and 19 stolen bases last season for the Wolverines. The Ann Arbor native had 21 RBIs and a .459 slugging percentage, while being named to the All-Big Ten 3rd team. Mazes was 4th in the Big Ten in doubles and tied for 4th in triples. He also tied for 5th in the league in both stolen bases and walks. He enters 2015 with 65 career RBI, 28 career doubles, and 35 career stolen bases. Cronenworth and Mazes both were named a Louisville Slugger preseason All-American, while Cronenworth also earned second-team honors by perfect game. The Wolverines will open the 2015 season next Friday at Long Beach State. First pitch at Blair Field is scheduled for 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. By today, we'll know how Coach Jim Harbaugh did with his first recruiting class. So make sure you visit us here at Maize n Brew for the nitty-gritty on each recruit. Visit www.maizenbrew.com for our recruiting wrap-up, the latest basketball news, and anything else that's happening around Wolverine Nation. Make sure you're in the Wolverine loop this busy time of year. Get your daily dose of Wolverine news and visit www.maizenbrew.com. Then each week, make sure you tune in the Michigan Man podcast right here at Maize n Brew for great interviews and conversation. If you listen to the show on your laptop or desktop, visit the iTunes Store and sign up for free weekly delivery. For Apple device users, our show app is also available from the iTunes Store. Android users can find our app in the Google Play Store by downloading the Podcast Box app. From there, just do a search for the show, and you can purchase the app. The show app is also available in the Windows 8 App Store. We're also featured weekly on TuneIn Radio and Stitcher Radio on demand. Whether you're at home, work, or on the road, it's never been easier to keep up with what's happening in Michigan athletics. Check out one of our apps and take the show with you wherever your busy life leads you. Thanks again to my guest this week, Rod Beard from the Detroit News. As I mentioned at the top of the show, National Signing Day is today, and we record the show on Tuesday, so next week we'll let the dust settle, and then we'll have our recruiting roundup show. My guest will be Michigan and college football recruiting analyst, Tim Sullivan from the Wolverine. Tim knows these future Wolverines inside and out, so make sure you join us next week for his in-depth breakdown on the class of 2015. It will be another busy week for Michigan basketball, and February is the make-it-or-break-it month if this young team plans on returning to the big dance in March. Joining me next week with his take on Michigan hoops will be Wolverine beat writer Brendan Quinn from MLive. So make sure you join us next week for another great show. That will do it for this week. Thanks for joining me, and make sure you tell your Wolverine friends and family about the show. Have a great Wolverine week, everyone. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Until next time, take care, and as always, go blue. Thanks for listening to the Michigan Man podcast. You can find us on the web at www.themichiganmanpodcast.com or www.maizenbrew.com. Our listener line is open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or you can email your thoughts and opinions to the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is brought to you in partnership with Maize n Brew, your best source for quality Michigan Wolverine news, analysis, stats, and scores from the fan perspective. Visit www.maizenbrew.com for the best coverage of your Wolverines. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!